The 2026 World Cup is right around the corner. Actually, no, the 2022 World Cup is right around the corner. The 2026 World Cup is still quite far. But today, we are going to talk about the 2026 World Cup. Hi, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV. And welcome to today's episodes, which we will talk about which cities will host the 2026 World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. We will be going through all the host candidates, possible stadiums, update on the current situation, tell you which ones I think will make and which ones might not. But look, it's all speculation because the bids were sent to FIFA and they're still picking the city. So I'm just going to speculate which ones I think will make it, but I'm only going to give you accurate information in terms of which ones put on a bid. But yes, we'll go through all the U.S. cities, all the U.S. stadiums, all the Mexican cities, all the Mexican stadiums, and all the Canadian stadiums and Canadian cities. But for Mexico and Canada, I'm going to count with the help of two guests. For Canada, I'm going to have no one less than the rudest Canadian of them all, or one of them, Adrian from FuboTV. And for Mexico, I'm going to have Javi, a friend of the channel that you all have seen here before, from El3 Universo on Twitter. I'm putting their handles down in the description, so make sure to go follow them. All right, I've talked too much. By now, you should have already smashed the like button and subscribed, or not. I can't force you to do that. So let's go, play the intro, and let's start with a quick preview before I go to the three countries, United States, Canada, then Mexico. The 2026 World Cup is set to be hosted in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. We haven't had a co-hosted World Cup since 2002, where South Korea and Japan co-hosted that edition, since FIFA kinda banned co-hosting World Cups, but it's back. This World Cup, as of now, is supposed to have a total of 16 host cities. Host cities and stadiums, of course, to which 11 of them will be in the United States, 3 will be in Mexico, and 2 will be in Canada. The United States currently has 17 candidate stadiums. The reason I say stadiums is because some cities have 2 stadiums that are bidding for a World Cup presence. So 6 out of the 17 will be cut. Now, for Mexico, they have 3 bidders and 3 spots, so none of them will be cut. Now, Canada, they have 3 bidders and 2 spots, so 1 Canadian stadium will be cut, or city. Now, before we start talking about all the cities, keep one thing in mind, or 1 or 2 things in mind. Let me go through that real quick. This World Cup will be the first one with 48 nations, an expanded version, and honestly, I kind of like it. Also, in the past, FIFA has had a requirement for the World Cup stadiums to have a minimum of 40,000 seats, 40,000 of capacity. So the knockout rounds are even higher. I believe it's over 60,000 minimum capacity, and the final is even higher, which is why you won't see any MLS soccer-specific stadium in the US listed places in this video. Also, any NFL stadium that has turf, they will have to switch to natural grass. It's a FIFA requirement. All right, now let's go through the United States bidders, or the stadiums that put on a bid to be in the 2026 World Cup. Keep in mind, I'm going to give you 17 of them, and 6 will have to be cut down to 11. So comment down below, which stadiums/cities do you think will be in the 2026 World Cup for the United States? Okay, so let's get started. So the first city that I want to talk about is Boston in Massachusetts. Boston currently has the Gillette Stadium, which currently holds a capacity of 65,000 people. Boston was one of the host cities in the 1994 World Cup here in the United States. For that edition, the stadium used was Foxborough Stadium, which now has been demolished and replaced by Gillette Stadium and a shopping center as well. Gillette Stadium is currently used by the New England Patriots in NFL and the New England Revolution in MLS. As I said, the capacity is a little over 65,000. However, it seems like the bid for the World Cup has a capacity expanded to 70,000. And, in my opinion, Boston makes it. Number 2 on the list is New York, New Jersey. And yes, it's New York, New Jersey combined. It's kind of New York, but the stadium is in New Jersey. I'll explain. New York, New Jersey were also host in the 1994 World Cup, and for that edition, the Giant Stadium was used. That stadium no longer exists, and in the bid, it has been replaced by MetLife Stadium, a stadium that holds capacity close to 90,000 people. So that could be a candidate for the final, maybe. Now, this stadium has hosted soccer matches in the past, but mainly it is used for the New York Giants and the New York Jets, essentially NFL. I actually went to a Brazil-Argentina back in 2013, I believe, where Messi ran over Brazil for that friendly. The stadium is located in New Jersey, but as you know, as I said earlier in the video, it's called New York, New Jersey because they're both putting the bid to host in the World Cup. New York is one of the most iconic cities in the world in general, but let's not forget the great Pele also played in New York back in the 70s for the New York Cosmos. Also, the 2016 Copa America Centenario final was played in the MetLife Stadium with over 80,000 people present. To me, MetLife will make it to the World Cup. Next up is Philly. So Philadelphia. Every time I think of Philadelphia, it kind of reminds me of Rocky Balboa. I just don't know why. Now, Philly was not one of the host cities for the 1994 World Cup, but this time they want to be. The bid was placed for the Lincoln Financial Field Stadium to be the host that has a capacity slightly below 70,000 people. This is the home of the Philadelphia Eagles in NFL, and it's a beautiful stadium. And I actually think they might make it, because I also do want to believe that having an MLS club in the city will play somewhat of a role in this decision. I could be wrong, but I think Philadelphia will make it. Next up is Baltimore in Maryland. So still on the East Coast of the United States, we have Baltimore located in Maryland, which would be the closest one to our capital, Washington, D.C. I hope I got that right. Baltimore also has the M&T Stadium, which holds a capacity a little bit over 70,000 people. The stadium is the home of the NFL franchise, the Baltimore Ravens. Originally, DC and Baltimore had put separate bids, but they decided to go with just the M&T Stadium location at Baltimore, while DC will be hosting the Fan Fest at the National Mall. Now, Baltimore does not have an MLS team, but DC does. They have DC United, and personally, I think Baltimore will make it as one of the host cities. Okay, bid number 5 is Cincinnati in Ohio. Oh, Ohio, the current girlfriend of U.S. soccer. Cincinnati has put a bid with the Paul Brown Stadium, the home of the Cincinnati Bengals, that holds capacity for a little bit over 67,000 people. It's also turf, but obviously, if picked for the World Cup, it would switch to natural grass. Cincinnati is in a serious relationship with U.S. soccer, but I don't think FIFA will want to mess with that. So I don't think Cincinnati will make it as a host for the World Cup. Now, jokes aside, it's more because of the other cities that I think are locks. So I'm making this assumption that Cincinnati won't make it, but I can be very, very wrong. I mean, all the cities that put on a bid are more than capable of hosting the World Cup. Yeah, so I don't think Cincinnati will make it. Next on the list is Nashville. Nashville, Tennessee. Most recently, you might remember the U.S. men's national team facing Canada there for World Cup qualifying at Nissan Stadium. The stadium is owned by the Metropolitan Government of Tennessee and is the home of the Tennessee Titans from NFL. Now, the Nashville Soccer Club just opened up a brand new soccer-specific stadium, but unfortunately, its capacity is around 30,000 people, which is well below the minimum requirements from FIFA. So Nissan Stadium with a capacity of 69,000, nice, is the one to represent Nashville. Nashville is the city many friends of mine have visited and recommended. I really need to find some time to stop by, but you know, for some reason, I'm not a big fan of country music. But I should absolutely visit the music capital of the United States. Now, as for the World Cup, because I'm getting off topic, I think Nashville or Nissan Stadium will be selected. In my opinion, Nissan Stadium will make it. Okay, bid number 7, and we're still on the East Coast of the United States, and that will be Atlanta in Georgia. Atlanta has one of the most beautiful stadiums available. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium currently has capacity slightly over 70,000 people, but at the bid for the World Cup, apparently it'll be 75,000. I'm not sure how they're going to expand it. One issue is they have to adjust its turf, which if they do make it to the World Cup, they will make it grass. The stadium is currently used by the Atlanta Falcons from NFL and by MLS side Atlanta United. Also, this is a fun fact that y'all should keep in mind because I think Atlanta will be selected. Ever since Atlanta United joined MLS in 2017, they have always held the highest average attendance in the league, constantly keeping it above 40,000 people per game. Besides when there was COVID, obviously, that the average attendance has dropped. So this city has a lot of soccer fans. It's also the headquarters of Coca-Cola, and I personally think that Atlanta will make it to the 2026 World Cup. All right, bid number 6, still on the East Coast, is Orlando in Florida, my city. Now, Orlando was one of the hosts of the 1994 World Cup. At the time, it was the Citrus Bowl Stadium, which now is pretty much the same stadium, but it's called Camping World. So Orlando's the land of Mickey Mouse, where Disney rules, and definitely it is ready to receive a lot of tourists and soccer fans across the globe. Orlando also does have an MLS team club called Orlando City. The stadium holds capacity to 65,000 people, but it might need a bit of renovations if it wins a bid, I think. And the owner currently is the city of Orlando, so I'm not sure how much they can do with public money. Regardless, there are 2 candidates in Florida, and I think only one of them will make it. And I don't think Orlando will be one of the hosts, which upsets me because I live here, but I really don't think Orlando is going to win this one. Maybe for the Fan Fest. Which brings me to bid number 9, which is Miami, and I already spoiled it saying that I do think Miami will make it to the 2026 World Cup. The bid for Miami will be at the Hard Rock Stadium for sure, where the Miami Dolphins play. A beautiful stadium, by the way, a stadium that has also hosted 6 Super Bowls already, and to be quite frank, it's a better stadium than Camping World in Orlando. The capacity is roughly 65,000, which is also perfectly fine for the World Cup, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be very hot to play in Miami during the summer, which the 2026 World Cup will be during the summer. Miami also does have an MLS club, Inter Miami. They are currently working on getting their own new stadium built soon. However, it is below the minimum capacity requirement, so Hard Rock Stadium is the one for Miami, and I think they will make it. Next up is Kansas City, which I've been there. Kansas City, a city that I have, as I said, I've been there before. A great city, especially its barbecue. Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas City State, has put a bid with the Arrowhead Stadium, the home of the Kansas City Chiefs, with capacity to 76,000 people. Now, Sporting KC, the MLS club, is located in Kansas City, Kansas State, not Missouri. I know it's quite a bit odd. It's 2 of the same cities almost in different state. It's confusing. Maybe someone that lives there can explain. Children Mercy's Park at the Sporting KC Stadium is also below capacity, so it wouldn't be able to make it to the World Cup. Regardless, I don't think Arrowhead Stadium will make it to the 2026 World Cup, in my opinion. Okay, bid number 11, and now we've arrived in Texas, and let's start with Houston. Houston, Texas, a city that does also have a beautiful MLS soccer specific stadium, the BBVA Stadium, home of the Houston Dynamo, but it also does not reach the minimum capacity needed for a World Cup. So Houston, the bid was placed for the NRG Stadium and home of the Houston Texans from NFL, a massive stadium with capacity to 72,000 people. This stadium was also the host of the 2017 Super Bowl. I have been to Houston a lot of soccer fans there, and it's a massive city, the highest population in Texas, and completely off topic here, it's also the headquarters of NASA. Also, due to proximity to Mexico, I think Houston will make it to the 2026 World Cup. The next bid I want to talk about is also a city in Texas, and I think Texas is one of those states that will have 2 hosts, and the other one is Dallas. We're not leaving Texas yet, as I firmly believe, as I previously said, that they will have 2 stadiums hosting this World Cup, and the other one that I'm already spoiling to you is Dallas. Dallas also has FC Dallas in MLS, but the stadium to put a bid was the AT&T Stadium, the home of the Dallas Cowboys from NFL. Now, this one to me is a lock, not just because of Dallas, but the stadium is likely going to host the final, or one of the candidates. For starters, it's the highest capacity stadium of them all, of all the bids, including Mexico and Canada, holding up a capacity close to 93,000 people. And it's also one of the most modern stadiums in the world. It did cost over $1 billion to make it, by the way. AT&T Stadium is a must for the 2026 World Cup. Bid number 13, and that is Denver, Colorado. And just to spoil right away, I don't think they will make it to the 2026 World Cup. But again, I'm literally just guessing. Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado. The stadium is named that way due to being 1 mile above sea level, aka what we call the altitude. The name is actually Empower Field at Mile High, and it's the home of the Denver Broncos in NFL. Colorado also does have an MLS team called the Colorado Rapids. This was also the stadium of the first ever CONCACAF Nations League final played in 2021, where the United States defeated Mexico in extra time with plenty of iconic moments involving Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Ethan Horvath. The stadium holds a capacity of over 75,000 people. Now, I don't think they're going to be selected, as I said, and I have no logical reason besides the fact that I already have other 11 that I expect to be the host. That's all. Okay, now we have arrived in California. So we're all the way at the West Coast, as much as you can. And the first city will be LA. And LA has 2 stadiums that have put a bid, and I think one of them will make it. So, Los Angeles, we've reached the Golden State, and LA is the only city to put in a bid for 2 different stadiums, as I said. One being the iconic Rose Bowl, also old, at least it looks pretty damn old. Probably would need renovations if selected. The Rose Bowl holds capacity to 88,000 people, and it was also the stadium that hosted the World Cup final in 1994. The other stadium to enter the bid is the SoFi Stadium, which holds a capacity lower than the Rose Bowl, which is 70,000 people, but it is easily the most modern stadium of them all mentioned in this video, as it was founded in 2020. It does have to make some adjustments so that it can be in the right dimensions of the field and get rid of turf to meet the World Cup, but that's easy stuff, and they'll probably do it if they win the bid. But this stadium, the SoFi Stadium, in my opinion, has to be in the 2026 World Cup. It's also the home of the LA Rams and LA Chargers, despite LA having 2 MLS teams as well. Both of them don't play there, the LA Galaxy and the LAFC. Little fun fact too, the Kroenkes, the owners of Arsenal, they're also the owners of SoFi Stadium in LA, California. For this one, as I said, I expect one stadium to make it. I think SoFi Stadium is much more likely to make it to 2026 instead of the 1994 final stadium, which was the Rose Bowl. So SoFi in, Rose Bowl out. But again, I could be very wrong. Okay, so we got 2 more bids to go for the United States, and we're still going to stay in California because California put on a total of 3 bids. It's the only state to do that. And now we're going to go to San Francisco. San Francisco put in a bid for Levi's Stadium, the home of the 49ers in NFL, with a capacity near 71,000. What's pretty funny is the record capacity for this stadium is actually 76,000 for a WrestleMania event, but it makes sense because they can expand it to the field, so the capacity will be higher than 71,000. This stadium opened in 2014 and it cost around $1.3 billion. Personally, I don't think it'll make it because I think California will have only one host city and one host stadium, and I personally think it's going to be SoFi Stadium for some reason. Now, here's a little fun fact for you about this stadium, this NFL stadium. The first ever game played in this football stadium was actually a soccer match. It was an MLS match between the San Jose Earthquakes and the Seattle Sounders with an attendance close to 50,000 people. It also does have natural grass instead of turf, which is something you need for a World Cup. So I don't know if that'll play a role and help them get the bid, but I don't think San Francisco will make it, unfortunately. The last one, number 17, the last bid is Seattle. Seattle, home of the Sounders, probably the most well-ran franchise in MLS. Unfortunately, it's also the home of Bill Gates. That's one creepy dude. Seattle Stadium would be Lumen Field, used by the Sounders and NFL side, the Seattle Seahawks. A beautiful stadium with a capacity of 70,000 people, which also holds the record attendance for the CONCACAF Champions League. And I think Seattle will be one of the host cities, and Lumen Field will be one of the host stadiums for the 2026 World Cup. Okay, so just to recap, these are the 11 cities I selected for the 2026 World Cup that will make it, in my opinion. Don't forget to comment yours down below. So the cities I'm guessing there will be Boston, New York, New Jersey with MetLife, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Atlanta, Miami, Houston, Dallas, LA, Seattle, and Nashville. Okay, now, Canada. Canada comes in to host the World Cup for the first time in their history, and after qualifying to the 2022 World Cup, something that had not happened since 1986, the hype around the team is big. But that's a topic for another video. Today, we're only going to talk about the host cities. And Canada has 3 host candidates, which are Edmonton, Vancouver, and Toronto. Out of those 3, only 2 will make it. Vancouver originally at one point have given up, but they have returned. Now, I do personally think that Toronto and Vancouver are the favorites here, and that could be something due to MLS influence. I mean, Toronto FC and Vancouver Whitecaps are 2 MLS sides that are in the cities. Edmonton does not have an MLS club. But I'm not going to talk more about Canada. Let's bring in Adrian from FuboTV, and he'll be doing all the talking for the Canadian section.
As far as sexiness goes, Edmonton, and I'm sorry to all my prairie brothers out there, Edmonton is probably the least sexy option for tourists when you're comparing it to both Toronto and Vancouver. It's in this weird kind of prairie meets forest area of Canada that is largely flat and may have some natural beauty around it, but when it comes to comparing what you can do in Vancouver or Toronto versus Edmonton, it falls a bit flat, pun intended, because prairies, you know? That said, some of the storylines that the Commonwealth Stadium has provided Canada soccer has been great, such as the results against Costa Rica and Mexico at the Azteca, and the massive 60,000-ish seater stadium certainly meets FIFA's demands for capacity, though it would require a new pitch, as it currently has an artificial surface. I have no qualms with the stadium itself, especially once it has a natural surface, but I think those coming from out of the country would have more fun in other cities like Toronto or Vancouver. I guess there's the West Edmonton Mall, Canada's biggest mall, and it has a water park, which I wasn't allowed to go to as a kid. So if you go, let me know how it is. Toronto, not the capital of Canada unless you ask somebody from Toronto about that, but it's certainly one of the best options we have as far as host cities go. Not just because of BMO Field, which we'll get to in a moment, but because culturally and tourism-wise, it's a great city to check out in Canada. Don't bother going up the CN Tower, though. Not worth it. Drake is washed for going up there. As far as BMO Field goes, it is probably the best soccer-specific stadium in Canada with a capacity of 30,000, but the plans are already in place to expand it up to 40,000 to meet that threshold that FIFA demands, and they can add even more if they want to. Canadian winters are either cold or incredibly rainy. That's why there are often so many turf pitches across the country, but BMO Field is all natural. All the time, baby. Great pitch, great atmosphere, and a fun city to visit. Not as fun as Montreal, though. No biases, of course. Vancouver. What an interesting play they had in pulling out of the running and then injecting themselves back in it. It would have been a shame for Vancouver to not count themselves in, as the city is stunning, sitting right on the ocean with a backdrop of the coastal mountain range, and BC Place Stadium sits right on False Creek in Vancouver. It's stunning, easily the most picturesque of the cities that are in the running for Canada. There's plenty to do as a tourist, and what's nice about BC Place is that it is right downtown in Vancouver and close to all of the best food and entertainment the city has to offer. But if you want to journey out to, Squamish or Whistler to get a more natural outing, you're not too far from that either. BC Place has already hosted a World Cup final, the Women's World Cup final back in 2015, and with a capacity of over 50,000 and that retractable roof, it's a pretty sick stadium, man. Now, it would have to have a natural surface installed, but if or when that's done, it would absolutely be a perfect stadium and city to host some World Cup matches.
Okay, you've heard it from Adrian from FuboTV about Canada. Now it's time to talk about the beautiful country of Mexico. Mexico has 3 host cities, which all of them will make it, obviously, because they also have 3 spots. And all these cities were also part of the 1986 World Cup. Monterrey hosted 8 games in that edition, Guadalajara hosted a total of 10, and Mexico City hosted a total of 9 matches. Without forgetting to mention that Mexico City and Guadalajara were also host cities for the 1970 World Cup. So yes, Mexico is going to be hosting the World Cup for the 3rd time. And obviously, Mexico City has the legendary Azteca Stadium where Pelé won the World Cup in 1970 and Maradona won the World Cup in 1986, along with the Hand of God. That was also in Mexico City at the Azteca Stadium. But that's enough of me talking about Mexico. Let's bring in Javi and let him talk about all 3 cities. All right, Javi, welcome back to the channel once again.
Thank you, Filippo. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Javi, my question to you is this. I want you to talk about all the host candidate cities for Mexico, which Mexico has something unusual, different from Canada and the United States. Mexico has 3 spots and 3 candidates. So that means none of these cities will get cut, right? They're going to be the host cities of the World Cup. And they were also host cities in the 1986 World Cup, Monterrey, Mexico City, and Guadalajara. So why don't we start with Monterrey? What can you tell us about the city, the stadium, what to expect?
So as far as Monterrey goes, it's one of Mexico's, as far as the city goes, it's one of its most sprawling cities. It's developed really well in terms of economically. It's growing. It's always growing. It's a very, very much urban city. People move there for the jobs, and it's reflected in their soccer infrastructure, because we have the Estadio BBVA, and Tigres has their Volcan. I'm more than positive that BBVA is what we're going to be seeing in the World Cup. It's a beautiful stadium. It's fairly new.
What's the name?
The Estadio BBVA. It's named after the bank. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I was trying to get. So what's the capacity of that stadium?
So the capacity for the Estadio BBVA is 51,000. Mm-hmm. That's the capacity now. It's always full of Monterrey fans. The Monterrey fan base is a very dedicated one. So it'll definitely be it'll be amazing to see that get filled with fans from other countries.
Okay, so now the second city I want you to talk about for us is probably one that Americans know very well because we usually play there for World Cup qualifying when we go away against Mexico in Mexico City for the Estadio Azteca. But tell us a little bit more about Mexico City and the Estadio Azteca. And correct me if I'm wrong, altitude.
Altitude. So Mexico City is definitely one of the most, to me, outstanding cities in the world. It's a huge city, one of the biggest in terms of population. And the culture in Mexico City is definitely a phenomenon within Mexico. It's, sprawling with culture. There's so many different aspects. So if you're there for the World Cup, might as well go there for the tourism as well, because there's so many things to do. And as far as the Estadio Azteca goes, I think to me should be a wonder of the world because it's huge. You could see it in person all your life, but the minute you step foot in that stadium, you think to yourself, wow, TV doesn't do it any justice.
I was gonna say, how many times have you been there? You've been there, right? To the city.
Yeah, so I've been in the Azteca twice. My first time was actually versus the USMNT in World Cup qualifying this round, 2022. And my second time was the following week versus El Salvador.
So twice just now. You just went twice right now.
Just now, but it's everything and more that you could ever see on the television. It's huge.
And I think the capacity, well, not I think, I'm 100% sure it's over 100,000 people. If I'm not mistaken, 110, 115, that's what we should expect in the World Cup. And probably every game will be packed there.
Yes. Yeah, over 100K. And I think with renovations, I think they knocked down a couple. So we might be looking at maybe 80, 90,000. 90,000 capacity just because of renovations made around the stadium to the lower levels. They added like VIP clubs and a couple other exclusive sections of the stadium. So we might see that a little knocked down. But I think one of the most like mesmerizing parts of the Azteca is sitting way up high. It feels like you're gonna fall way to the bottom. It's a crazy feeling.
Okay, the last city is Guadalajara, and tell us a little bit about more the city of Chivas.
Yeah. So Guadalajara, and Jalisco itself, the state, is a very culturally rich food. The culture behind it's definitely a very beautiful place to go visit. As far as the stadium goes, it's the home of El Estadio Akron is home of Chivas Guadalajara. Capacity there is around 48K, so it's a very good crowd. It's a very recently built stadium too. It's one of the more advanced infrastructures within Mexican soccer, and it on the architecture on the outside is very interesting. You have like a elevated platform with grass surrounding it all around. It's definitely very photogenic stadium. And
so it's the smallest of the three stadiums then.
Yeah, it's maybe the smallest of the three. But it's definitely a sight to see.
All right, Javi, thank you very much for coming along. And I mean, I'm going to talk about the United States in this video as well, but that's all for Mexico. And just a friendly reminder to everyone, Mexico, all three cities that are candidates will make it because Mexico had three cities. The United States has more and they only have 11 spots, so they'll have to cut a few down. And Canada will have 3 and they'll have to cut 1 down because they only have 2 cities. Thank you very much for coming along, Javi.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, that does it for this video. Obviously, when we have the official confirmation of all the cities, we'll be going through all of them here in the channel covering the 2026 World Cup, even though it's very far. So first, let's live the 2022, then we'll worry more about the 2026. But I thought this was a fun video to make to keep you all informed. Don't forget to comment down below which cities you'd like to see in the 2026 World Cup and smash the like button if you made it this far in the video. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and have a great day.